Hi, everyone. This is Debbie Vornhull with Commonsense Landlording. I'm going to take a few minutes and go over some of the Section 8 requirements. I'm getting a lot of questions on Section 8 lately, and there seems to be a lot of confusion about vouchers and who you can accept and how you should screen them and all sorts of things. So I'm probably going to do 2 or 3 different videos because this is a big topic. And I know we're all busy, and I want to keep these kind of short and sweet. So the first thing I'd like to cover is the actual, how do you screen these tenants? I get questions all the time. How do I screen them? What do I do? Or, oh my gosh, someone wants to rent a property from me and they have Section 8. I always tell you, do not change your screening requirements. However you screen every other applicant, every other tenant or prospect, do the same thing with Section 8. Now, there will be a couple of differences. For example, we can't require a job, and the income requirements are a little bit different. But I'll go through all of that. But Section 8 themselves tell you how to do this. You need to request an owner packet. I always tell people, get an owner packet. Get one annually, because they do sneak in updates. They change things, and they're not going to tell you a lot of times. I mean, here in Louisville, Kentucky, a lot of times they'll send you an email, but what if you miss it? What if you don't know? So it is up to you to be up on what the latest and newest information and requirements are. So whether you're here with us in Louisville, Kentucky, or you're in a different state, get an owner packet and know the laws. That's the other thing. As a landlord, it is your responsibility to know your local laws, what you can and can't do, how you can screen. Some of the ways that I advocate screening for prospects and tenants, it may not be legal in your area. So again, always know the laws. And if you don't, either join a local real estate group or get an attorney who is familiar with the real estate laws. That being said, this is a page out of the owner's packet that I have up on the screen here. And it says right here, screen your participants the same way you would your market renters. So Section 8 is telling you, don't change anything, okay? They must meet your application, your screening and qualification requirements for tenancy and to be a desirable tenant. So they have all kinds of information in here, but they tell you they don't do criminal background checks. They don't do credit checks. They don't do any of that. So it is your job. They just give these people a voucher and promise to pay their rent. That's all they say, and that's all that they're going to do. So it is your responsibility to have them fill out a written application. They are responsible for paying into the application fees. They have to pay the security deposit. Now, if they get assistance from somewhere else, that's okay, but Section 8 doesn't pay their security deposit. Be sure that you get a copy of their voucher so that you have that on hand. And we used to have to sit down with them and add up their utility allowance. They've made some changes to the voucher, which is great. They now tell us what the voucher amount is with the utilities, which is awesome. So, but sit down with them, talk to them, and explain how all of this works. Treat them just like any other person. So the biggest issue that a lot of landlords has is, how do I know how much rent Section 8 will pay? And the voucher will tell you that. And if you get the owner's packet, it will give you examples, and we'll talk about that. So you have to look at the boxes. So box 6 on here, and we'll look at one of these. They've got an example in here on one of these. I'll open one of these here in a little while. But the rent that you charge cannot be more than the gross rent, the max gross rent that's listed, and it'll be listed on the voucher, okay? If the max gross rent that they'll pay is $900 and your rent is anything above $900, this person doesn't qualify. The voucher has to cover the full amount of the rent and the utility allowance. So they are not allowed, the tenant is not allowed to pay above. And I've heard some landlords say, oh, but they just cover the extra amount. Keep in mind, these tenants are being subsidized. Their rent is being subsidized and paid for. So it's illegal to have the tenant pay extra above and beyond what Section 8 says that they will pay and how much the tenant can pay. So you can't exceed that amount. It doesn't matter. The tenant will either pay something or nothing, but that max gross rent is all that can be charged. So if the voucher does not cover your rent, you can either lower your rent and rent to them, or you're going to have to pass on them and they have to go find another place to rent. That is the law. So be very careful that you understand how the law works. And they have a lot of examples in here. So one example here is for an apartment, a 1-bedroom voucher, and that will be noted in box 1. And it says that the how much rent that they'll pay. So rent, in this case, when he wants to rent a 2-bedroom unit and the rent's only $700, he has to pay all the utilities and everything and sewage. So you look at the housing voucher and the max gross rent in box 6 is $824 in this example right here. Okay, it lists it right here. And remember what we said, the rent is $700 a month. Okay, so in this case, this person's going to qualify to rent. And if you go down here, the rent's $700, the utility allowance is $119. So the voucher will cover the rent, and you will be allowed to rent to this person. So there are a couple other examples down here, or actually one more example down here. So in this case, this person has a 3-bedroom voucher. The rent's $1,125, again, has to pay the utilities. The utility allowance is $292. So when they add the rent, the gross rent, and the utility allowance, that is the total amount there. The max gross rent box is $1,388, and the gross rent is $1,417, which is over the maximum amount of rent allowed. So this unit costs more than the voucher will cover. So this person either cannot afford to rent this unit, or you have to lower your rent. And most of us don't lower our rent. So, and that's okay. You just tell the tenant, I'm sorry, your voucher does not cover the amount of the rent and they don't qualify. So remember that you are not going to be forced to rent to someone if their voucher doesn't cover the amount of rent. Section 8 is not going to come back to you and say, hey, you have to lower your rent so that this person can rent to you, or so that this person can rent from you. So just keep that in mind. The number on the voucher, the max rent, the biggest number, must cover the rent. If it doesn't, this person doesn't qualify. And it's just as simple as that. Do not waste any more time and effort on this person. Don't screen them. Don't get an application. I always request in the pre-screening process that they provide both numbers, and they have to provide that to me. They can take a picture of it and text it to me, but I want to see that. And then the other thing that I'll always want to know is if the voucher amount covers the rent and they qualify on that part, the next thing that I ask is how much will Section 8 pay of your rent, and roughly how much are you going to pay? Because I ask for income of 3 times the rent, and Section 8 has told us we're doing this wrong. So income of 3 times the rent can only be figured on the amount that the tenant pays. So in my example, where the voucher covers the rent of $1,000 a month, and Section 8 is going to pay $700, and then the tenant's portion is going to be $300 a month. So 700 plus 300 equals 1,000. Okay. So income of 3 times the rent can only be figured on the tenant's portion of $300. So 3 times 3 is $900. So this tenant, the most income that you can require this tenant to have, or this applicant, or whatever they are in the process, is $900 a month. And if they don't have income of $900 a month, they also don't qualify. So that's not very common. Usually they'll have SSI or they'll have disability, and that almost always covers it. But that is the way that you use the income of 3 times the rent with a voucher applicant. So let me know if you have any questions. This will be posted in the Facebook group, and I'll be able to answer any questions that you have. And I'm going to do a part 2 on this, maybe a part 3. There's a lot of information to cover, but be sure that you go out and you request a copy of your owner's packet. Here in Louisville, Kentucky, it's an emailed PDF. It's awesome. And it's broken down into a bunch of different pages so that you can easily access them. So I hope you found this helpful, and let me know if you have any questions.